Howdy, welcome to the garage today. I'm Luke, Thunderhead289 on YouTube. I got Kevin, Junkyard Digs, behind the camera today. And on this video, we're gonna take a look at the Edelbrock carburetor and one of the most misadjusted items, I guess, that I see people have on their setups that make an overall fairly large of an impact. And so we're gonna jump in today and just take a look.
I never actually ran an Edelbrock. What do you think of them?
I missed the box and it hit the garage door.
To be fair, this is already a junk carburetor, so no carburetors were harmed in the making of this film.
Yeah, and disclaimer, I actually do like Edelbrock carburetors pretty well. But there's one thing that's oftentimes missed with these, and today that's what we're gonna take a look at. All right, so to get started here, we need to understand fuel pressure and its dynamic relationship to the overall functionality of a carburetor. So this is kind of tricky. So Kevin and I, we decided, well, it's probably best to draw a little diagram that explains how all this works. So basically, fuel pressure and your overall buoyancy of the float and everything, there's just a lot to consider here, but just a rough idea, this is your float, this is your lever, this is your needle and seat. To offset the incoming fuel pressure of 3 psi, you only need to submerge your float so far. So then with more fuel pressure, as you can see, the float needs to be more and more submerged to offset that incoming pressure. The more you push the float down, the more it pushes back on you. So if you consider your float bowl, like we have here, where's the Holley float bowl? If you consider your float bowl in relation to the float, and this is our float bowl here, and these are the different levels. So if you have your float at a certain point, at a certain pressure, and then say you up this to 8 psi, now to close this needle and seat, your fuel level will be higher on your float, and then effectively it's going to be much higher on your float bowl overall. Now some of you might say, well, if you submerge something, you're actually displacing a liquid, so the fuel level would also go up if you push it down. This is a different scenario on a carburetor because actually with a running engine, you're drawing fuel out of the bowl at all times. So this is kind of the relationship here, and this is why Holleys are pretty nice in the sense that you have an adjustable float bowl. You can effectively, or an adjustable float rather, where you can move this float around. So if you have more fuel pressure, obviously that's going to sit higher on your float, but you can move that assembly down in a way so that your fuel in your bowl stays the same.
Okay, so from the audience's standpoint, I'm going to ask a couple questions right now to hopefully clear a couple things up, because this is actually the first time I've heard any of this as well. So I'm probably going to naturally have the questions they are. So the issue here with the Edelbrock is the adjustability of the float bowl height.
In a way, it's a two-part problem. So it doesn't have a form to actually adjust the float height. You actually bend the tang, much like how you would get these little guys in like a Motorcraft 2100 carburetor set or whatever, and bend it around. So you can actually adjust the float height. The problem is you can't see your fuel level.
Oh.
So if you don't know where your fuel level is, how do you know where to adjust it to? You don't. So that's why
there's a big ass plate over it. You're just like, well, it's in there somewhere. I don't know where my fuel level. I know where my float height is. I don't know where my fuel level is.
Correct. You have no idea. So if you keep with Edelbrock's supplied parameters of 5.5 psi and setting the float height with the 7/16 drill bit, which I do have a video on how to do that. It's a little invasive for today, but I'll leave the link below. If you keep with all of that, you'll be just fine.
And on a Holley or a Summit, you have this sight, or on newer ones even glass, so you can be like, oh, look, the fuel, it's right there.
Right, you can see it and can adjust for it and everything else.
Okay, so that's why you have to run a regulator to make every input consistent.
Correct.
Okay, so I understand that. Now let's go through what's happening inside the bowl really quick with a bit of dynamics, and let's break down that chart a little better.
You mean as far as the relationship of your fuel level and how it actually affects your carburetor?
Yeah.
So the issue with having more fuel in your bowl in that dynamic relationship of your main jet circuit is your boosters will come in sooner. The carburetor is designed to draw fuel out of the boosters at a certain vacuum signal. So if your fuel level is higher, it's going to come in early and it won't properly atomize. Now if your fuel level is too low, it's going to come in late and you're going to have a lean spot before you start getting that booster circuit in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what's happening is, since we can't move anything very well in the Edelbrock, we're getting too much fuel in the bowl, like you said, and because of that extra weight of the hydraulic fluid, or the fuel in the bowl, our head pressure is higher, so that it takes less airspeed through our venturis to draw fuel, and you'll have a rich bog. Correct. And if you have too little, you don't have that enough pressure on the jets, and that it takes too much airspeed to pull fuel.
It takes more airspeed than it's designed for. You have air bleeds and everything that are designed for a certain speed of fuel draw for everything to properly atomize the way it's supposed to do and blend. It actually blends, this is a Ford booster set, it actually first blends in these emulsion tubes with air. You know, here's your little air bleeds you can see on the side, and then they have another one back here, which I think is the idle air bleed, but you have to, or maybe that's the idle. Either way, you have to blend your air and fuel beforehand, and you just mess with that overall relationship if you don't have your float height set correctly. Now, a lot of you guys are probably like how I was 10 years ago, where you're running around with a mechanical pump, you know, much like this, it's mounted to the side of the block, whatever. And I made a little video a couple weeks ago explaining how these exactly work, which, you know, go check out or whatever. But basically, there's not a lot of quality control, I guess, and pressure on a mechanical pump. A lot of times I've seen them 8, 9 PSI. So again, if you're running around the mechanical pump and 8 or 9 PSI, your fuel level is going to be higher in your Edelbrock, and it's going to be drawing fuel out too early in the, like too low of a vacuum signal will draw fuel out and it won't atomize properly. And you're just really, there's a lot of dynamics that are hard to understand, but you're just messing with it. So if you keep with the proper fuel level, you'll be okay.
And the solution here to all of this is just regulate everything to 5 PSI.
Yeah,
if
you have an Edelbrock, you want to run a regulator. They're cheap, they're like 30 bucks, run a fuel pressure gauge. You want to set that thing to 5 to 5.5 PSI. If you keep in accordance with the spec'd out method of setting the float height, and you will be absolutely good to go.
So there you go.
But this is one of the things I see on a lot of Edelbrock carburetors that people are running. You know, they have fuel pressure that's not at that spec'd amount, and then again, with messing with all the dynamics of their carburetor, they're chasing around different adjustments to fix some issues that are actually associated with that piece, and then it'll never really perform at an optimum level. You'll just have band-aids all over the place for different circuits, and you should really just start out with a good baseline, have a good fuel pressure. A regulator will do that for you, regulate to 5, 5.5 PSI, and you're really pretty good to go.
So pretty much the exact first thing, the first setting on your carburetor that the fuel ever sees after the pressure, the input, but the first thing fuel sees coming into a carburetor is your bowl height, your float bowl height. And if that's wrong, everything behind it's going to be screwed up.
It's correct. It's one of those things where you want to have all your baselines correct before you start making adjustments. It's just like adjusting a carburetor. Each circuit is compounding, so you want to start out with your idle circuit before moving to your main jet and your fuel enrichment circuit. You know, this is even before that, where your baselines all need to be correct.
So basically, the moral in life is the more static and consistent you make everything, the better everything is.
A carburetor is a static metering device. The more you can keep your inputs to a carburetor consistent, the more consistent the performance output of the carburetor is going to be. So if nothing else, you know, but that's really what I wanted to get at with the Edelbrock today. It's a little known fact. People don't necessarily understand the dynamics behind it. And really, it's simple. $30 regulator, fixed. So that's what I have for you guys today.
So yeah, that all boils down to that, but there's some science there for you guys if you want to know what's happening inside your float bowls.
Howdy, welcome to the garage today. My volume is loud.
Why are we yelling?
Well, you know, to have any influx, I gotta talk loud now the side of my mouth. That's why I look stupid all the time.
Oh, I think you just look stupid because you're stupid.
Or else I just talk like this, and it's not very fun.
I'll just put influx into that. Get your eyebrows into it.
Today. Oh my god.
Today on Thunder Head.
Yeah.
All right.
I gotta talk with the strokey side of my face.